Welcome to Veggies and Herbs, where we share ideas and tips on how to grow your own organic vegetables in small spaces. My name is Ruben Molale, and in today's video, we will be focusing on how to grow your own organic vegetables in containers. So if you live in an apartment and you only have access to a balcony, or you have an existing garden and you want to increase your productivity, then this video is for you. Now, most vegetables can be grown in containers on a balcony or on a patio. So if you want to start growing your vegetables in containers, there are some factors that you must consider. Factor number one is the size of the container. So obviously you need to choose a container that will be able to fit into your environment. But the most important reason why you need to consider the size of the container is to ensure that the container will be able to accommodate the root system of that particular vegetable. So vegetables or plants have different root systems, and it is therefore important that whatever container you will be using, that it will be able to accommodate the root system of that plant. So if you don't have a lot of space and you want to perhaps grow herbs, you can use a much smaller container and just put it on your windowsill. But if you want to grow, for instance, tomatoes, carrots, or butternut, then much bigger containers will be required. So what type of container will you be using? So there are many and very different types of containers made out of different materials. So if you are intending to use a container that was not intended for actually plants, then it's important to ensure that those containers are food grade. In other words, they should not contain any toxins that can actually affect the plant and your vegetables. But secondly, you also need to ensure that you make sufficient drainage holes at the bottom of that container. So the reason why drainage holes are so important is because it allows excess water to be expelled from the container, and also it allows sufficient oxygen in the container. Now, if you find value out of this video so far, can you please press the like button, as it would help the video and the channel to actually reach more people. Thank you so much for doing that. Now let's move over to the next point. The next item that you need to consider is the type of soil that you will be using. Although it is possible to actually use soil from your garden in your containers, the downside is that you could be transferring some soil-borne diseases from your garden into your containers. Another downside is that you will also, or you could transfer wheat from your garden into your containers, and garden soil is much more heavier, and it could result that your pots dry out more frequently. So the solution to this is to ensure that perhaps you invest in a good potting mix that will be able to supply your plant with sufficient nutrients to grow. So when it comes to taking care of your plant, there will be two aspects that will be important, and that is firstly watering. So the irrigation needs of your containers will be determined by the following factors. Firstly is the size of the container. So smaller containers tend to dry out much more quicker than bigger containers, because bigger containers can hold moisture much more longer. So the size of container will determine how frequently you will be watering your containers. The second aspect will be the climate conditions. During the hot summer periods, you will be required to actually water your plants much more frequently, for instance in the morning and also in the afternoon. And the final factor that will determine how frequently you will be watering your containers will be the maturity of the plant. If the plant is much more mature, it will require much more water than smaller plants. So those will be the aspects that will determine how frequently you will be watering your containers. So the second part of taking care of your containers will be how you will fertilize or feed your plants. So the benefit of actually investing in a good potting mix is that in the initial stages the plant will be fed or will obtain its nutrients actually from the soil. But as time progresses, the nutrition in the soil will deplete, and therefore as a gardener you will be required to actually either make use of a granular fertilizer, maybe compost, to ensure that you actually feed your soil so that the plant can then absorb all the nutrients, or you can then make use of liquid fertilizer. So just to mention that when it comes to watering and you want to see when to water, a good rule of thumb is to actually put your finger into your soil, maybe 1 inch deep, just to check if what is the water content. If the top layer is dry, then there's definitely a sign for you to actually water your containers. So if you intend to actually make use of containers that were not meant to grow vegetables, you can always use a bucket, a plastic container, and also you can always make use of growing bags. At the moment I only have 3 raised beds, and since potatoes is a big crop and can take up a lot of space, I decided to actually try out to grow some potatoes actually in these bags. The thing is that when you decide to actually grow potatoes maybe in bags, is to ensure that you do not put too many seed potatoes in the bag. I've only limited the amount to 2 so that the bag cannot be crowded. Another option also is to make use of compost bags. So I just made some holes at the bottom, and then I've made holes where I've actually just transplanted the seedlings. But before I transplant the seedlings, I just ensure that I water it thoroughly so that it can be moist. So there are many ideas that you can use actually if you do not have sufficient funds to invest in containers. Well guys, that's all we have for today. I hope you found value out of this video. If you are subscribing to the channel, you are awesome, and thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And if you are interested in content like this, consider subscribing to the channel. I hope you are safe, and I hope you remain well, and I'll see you then in the next video.